No one saw the car crash. No one heard the screams. But when Ava walked barefoot into a gas station at 2:14 a.m., her white dress soaked in blood and her eyes glazed with terror, the clerk froze mid-sentence. "Where's your face?" she whispered, not realizing she still had one. What followed was a tangle of contradictions. A woman with no ID, no memory, and no recent injuries, insisting she just climbed out of a wreck that left 5 people dead. But the police found no crash, no blood, and no sign that Ava ever existed. The fluorescent lights buzzed above her like angry bees. Cold tile pressed against her feet as she stood in the gas station doorway, trembling, her arms limp at her sides. The blood on her dress had dried into stiff, copper-black crusts. She didn't seem to notice. She just kept whispering the same words. I couldn't wake them up. The clerk, a woman in her late 40s with cigarette breath and a lifetime. Movie Marathon paused on her phone, dropped the bag of chips she was restocking. Are you hurt? She asked, her voice cracking. Are you in trouble? Ava blinked slowly. Her lips were moving, but the words were thin, fractured. 5, she murmured. I think 5. There was screaming. I tried. 2. The 911 call was short. The police arrived in under 10 minutes. By then, Ava was curled in a fetal position near the refrigerated drinks, her fingernails raw from clawing at her own scalp. She couldn't tell them her name. She had no wallet, no phone, no shoes. Just the dress, the blood, and the nightmare playing on loop inside her head dot at the hospital. A psych evaluation was ordered immediately. Dissociative amnesia, the psychiatrist wrote. Potential PTSD, no signs of drug use, but will. Run tox, she's in shock. We need to monitor for self-harm. They placed her under observation, assigned her a quiet room with soft lighting and a one-on-one nurse. She barely spoke, but when she did, it always came back to the same image. A mangled car in the woods, broken glass. The smell of gasoline. Someone's hand twitching, then still. But when the police swept the area she described, the stretch of Route 119 near Boone's Hollow, they found nothing. No debris, no tire marks. No bodies. No crash. Still, the doctors insisted, something had happened to Ava. Her symptoms weren't faked. Her vitals were real. The way her pupils shrank in panic every time someone mentioned headlights or metal. That couldn't be rehearsed. The problem was, no one reported her missing. No fingerprints in any database. No relatives looking for her. She was, to all systems, a ghost. Detective Marcus Leary took a personal interest in her case. Something about the way she stared at walls as if they might open, as if someone might step through them, unsettled him more than he liked to admit. On the 5th night, she spoke to him directly. You have to find the others, she whispered, gripping his wrist so tightly her knuckles went white. Before it resets, he frowned. What resets? She looked up at him with empty, gray eyes. This, me, all of it. And then she started screaming. The hospital had a distinct hum at night, a soft mechanical lullaby of monitors. Vents and footsteps behind glass. Ava didn't sleep. She couldn't. Every time her eyes closed, she was yanked backward through. Sound, metal shrieking, bones snapping, the sharp gasp of a child. The images weren't dreams. They were memories, disjointed, impossible memories. Detective Leary stood outside her room with Dr. Karen Albee, head of psychiatric trauma at Pine Ridge Medical. She's exhibiting signs of traumatic re-experiencing. Albee explained, flipping through a thin patient file. We're leaning toward dissociative amnesia with possible fugue state. But something's off. Leary nodded. You think she's lying? No, I think she's fractured. Inside, Ava stared at the blank TV screen. She hadn't spoken since her outburst the night before, but her body was wound tight like a spring. When the nurse tried to change her bedding, Ava flinched like she'd been struck. That afternoon, something changed. During a routine neurological exam, the attending noticed Ava's eye movements, rapid saccades when asked to recall faces or events, even when she insisted she didn't remember. He ran a visual memory test. Her results were abnormal. Not low, abnormally high. Her visual spatial recall is nearly eidetic, the neurologist said. If she's faking memory loss, she's a savant at faking. Albee grew concerned. Could this be temporal lobe epilepsy? Something triggering flashbacks? Unlikely, the neurologist replied. There's another possibility, though. Rare, but it happens. A condition called derealization disorder. Trauma so severe it disconnects the brain's perception of reality itself. She keeps saying it's going to reset, Leary murmured. Albee frowned. That's consistent. Leary decided to push. That night, he brought Ava something. An old Polaroid camera, the kind with a film cartridge. He placed it on the table and backed away. You said it resets, he said softly. So let's break the pattern. She looked at him like he'd handed her a loaded gun. Her fingers hovered over the camera, trembling, and then, click, the shutter snapped. The picture began to develop in her lap. She stared at it for a full minute without speaking. Then, barely audible. That wasn't there before. Leary moved closer. What wasn't? She turned the photo around. A blurred image of her hospital room. Bed, tray, lamp, except in the corner there was a shape. Not clear. Just a smudge, a vague silhouette. Right there, she whispered, tapping it. That's where he stands. Right before it starts over. Leary looked. Who? Her hands shook as she clutched the photo. The man with no eyes. That night, the camera vanished from her room. No staff touched it. No visitors were logged. And in the morning, Ava had scratches on her arms, deep, erratic, as if someone had grabbed her in the night. But the security footage? It showed nothing. Only Ava alone, waking from sleep, and staring, frozen, at something just outside the frame. Detective Leary stared at the security footage for the 6th time. The timestamp rolled past 3:03 a.m. Ava was asleep. Then, without warning, her body jerked upright like she'd been yanked by an invisible cord. She sat there, rigid, her eyes locked on the corner of the room, not blinking, not moving. The footage ran for 13 minutes. At no point did anyone enter, and yet her expression. It wasn't fear. It was recognition. Leary rewound again, pausing on a frame where her lips moved slightly. He brought in a forensic lip reader, just to be sure. She's saying the same phrase, the expert confirmed, over and over. I know what I did. But Ava didn't know. At least, not consciously. When they questioned her the next day, she was mute, catatonic. She didn't respond to voices or touch. Only when the doctor gently whispered, Do you remember the crash? Did she react? Her whole body convulsed like she'd been electrocuted. Then, without looking up, she mumbled, He shows me the pieces. Every time, Leary brought the photo back from evidence. He wanted a second look, but the image had changed. The smudge in the corner, the silhouette, was darker now. More defined. Broad shoulders, long limbs, but no face. Like someone had soaked the figure in black ink. No eyes, just smooth, featureless skin. Must be a defect, the lab tech said, though he sounded unsure. Got Leary started researching. He didn't believe in ghosts, but something about Ava's fixation had started to infect his thoughts. He dug into local missing persons, unsolved crashes, even paranormal databases. It was a waste of time. Until he stumbled on an accident from 5 years ago, about 50 miles north. 5 killed. Car ran off the road, caught fire. Only one body was never recovered. A young woman, age 24, blonde, petite, last seen wearing a white summer dress. The name, Evelyn Carter. The photo, identical to Ava Dot. He called Albee immediately. Could dissociative identity disorder explain this? A total break from identity. Maybe she's Evelyn, and the trauma just wiped her? Albee hesitated. It's possible. But there's something else you need to see. She led him into her office and pulled up Ava's recent EEG scan. The brainwave patterns were inconsistent. There were spikes, violent bursts of activity, but only at very specific times. 3 in total, all between 3 o'clock and 3:15 a.m. Each time Ava had those spikes, something else happened too. A power flicker in the hospital wing, cameras glitching, the sound of metal scraping against the wall, but the rooms were empty. Always empty. Until last night. Albee played the most recent clip. At exactly 3:07 a.m., the camera glitched for half a second, just long enough to insert a single distorted frame. A face, pale, gaunt, stretched too wide to be human. No eyes, just a mouth, split into a jagged, impossible smile. That's what she sees. Albee whispered. And for the first time, Detective Leary felt afraid. At 3 a.m., the power in Wing C flickered again. This time, Ava was waiting. She stood barefoot in the middle of her hospital room, eyes wide open, dress rumpled, lips trembling. She wasn't asleep. She wasn't hallucinating. She knew it was coming. The room began to hum, not with sound, but with pressure, like the air itself was stretching thin. Her fingers twitched, and the moment the lights dimmed, she whispered, "I remember now." The camera outside her room caught something it shouldn't have. For a split second, as the hallway lights pulsed and buzzed, a second figure appeared behind the glass. Tall, still, just standing there. And when the lights returned, Ava was gone. The bed was empty. They found her 4 hours later, unconscious and soaking wet, in the hospital parking lot, curled beneath an emergency shower. Her fingernails were blackened, her feet scraped raw. Her dress was stiff, with what looked like ash. She was whispering again, over and over, "Burn it again, burn it again, burn it again." Leary arrived at dawn. He hadn't slept in days. He sat beside her bed as the nurses cleaned her up, but she didn't look at him. She stared at the ceiling like she was reading. Something written there. "I wasn't alone," she said finally. Her voice was quieter now, less frantic, more hollow. There were others, kids, a woman, someone in the trunk. In the crash? Leary asked. She nodded slowly. "I see it now. Not all at once, but like flashes. I was driving. I was crying. Someone was yelling. There was music. And then the tree, the fire." "Evelyn," he said gently. "Your name was Evelyn Carter. The crash was in 2019. You were declared missing. We thought you'd burned." She looked at him then, not scared, not confused, just calm. "I did burn." She reached for his hand, and her grip was ice cold. "I keep coming back here. I don't know why. It's like I'm being dragged backward, over and over. Every time I remember more, and every time I get closer to him." Leary swallowed. "A man with no eyes." She nodded. "He's not a ghost. He's not a person. He's what's left of guilt, of the second before impact. He's the part of you that won't let go, because it doesn't believe you should get to forget." A silence passed between them. For the first time, she looked truly awake. "I didn't just crash," she said. "I ran. I was trying to get away from something, someone, and I brought them with me. All of them." She leaned forward, her voice a hoarse whisper. There's a tape. Leary blinked. What kind of tape? Dash cam. Or phone, I don't know. But it's out there. In the woods? Near the crash site. That's why I'm still here. That's what he wants me to see. She began shaking violently. Her eyes rolled back. He wants me to watch it. And then she seized. Alarms blared. Nurses rushed in. Leary was pushed out of the room as her body writhed and thrashed under the straps, her voice rising to a scream. Aye, 'tis not a memory. It's a confession. The forest off Route 119 hadn't changed much since the crash. Pines still towered. Over the narrow shoulder, their roots coiling through black soil like veins. Leary stood beside his cruiser, the morning sun barely piercing the mist. He looked down the embankment where the report had said Evelyn's car had veered off Dash Road. No one had ever found the wreckage. Not a single bolt. But if the tape was out, here. He took a breath and started down. The slope was steep, slippery with moss and old rain. At the base, a narrow stream cut through the dirt, and the air grew thick with the smell of decay. Birds had gone silent. The kind of silence that wraps around you like plastic dot. He searched for nearly 2 hours. Every broken branch felt like a trail, every glint of sunlight on metal a false lid. But then, tucked beneath a fallen log, half buried, in mud, he saw it. A phone, caked in grime, screen cracked, battery long dead. But inside the case, wedged tightly, was a micro SD card. Leary didn't wait. He brought it back to the station, bypassed the corrupted files with forensic software, and hit play. The footage was shaky, low light, headlights flashing through trees. A young woman's voice, Evelyn's, was crying, panicked, begging. Someone to just leave him. We have to go. In the back seat, a man was shouting, angry, maybe drunk. There were kids. 2 of them. Crying. Then, the sound of tires screeching. A sharp, guttural scream. Can fire. But it wasn't over. The phone had kept recording. Long after the crash. The footage was sideways, partially obscured, probably thrown from the car. For a long time, there was only darkness and flames crackling in the distance. Then, footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. And something else. A rasping breath, not quite human. A shape moved past the camera, large, limber, limbs too long, head tilted wrong. And no eyes. It walked past the wreckage, stopped, turned. And stared directly into the lens for over a minute, then static. Leary slammed his laptop shut. His chest was tight. It had to be a trick of light, some horrific coincidence. But the timing, the figure, the way Ava had described it all weeks ago? Too exact. He called the hospital. No answer. The line rang and rang until finally, static. And then a whisper. She's almost done remembering. Click. Leary drove like a man possessed. When he arrived at Pine Ridge, the front lobby was in chaos. Nurses screaming. Code blue blaring over the intercom. Room 407. Ava's room, surrounded by staff. But when he pushed through them, bed was empty. Restraints unbuckled. 4 ripped out. Blood dripping to the floor. Only one thing remained. A photo, taken with the Polaroid. Ava, standing in the center of her room. And behind her, the man with no eyes. Closer now. His hand on her shoulder. The roads back to Boone's Hollow were empty at 4:13 a.m. Leary drove without sirens. Headlights cutting through dense fog. The photo on his passenger seat, fluttering with every bump. He hadn't told anyone where he was going, because part of him knew, if he found Ava, he wouldn't be coming back. She was waiting where it had all started. The woods were darker than before. The trees gnarled like arthritic hands. Leary spotted the outline of her body by the stream, standing barefoot in the freezing water, her soaked white dress clinging like a burial shroud. "Ava," he called. She didn't turn. He stepped closer. She was whispering to herself, over and over, the same words she'd said that night at the station. I couldn't wake them up. When he reached her, she finally turned to him. Her face was different. Now, not broken, not confused, but hollow. She looked like someone who had finally seen the last piece of the puzzle and hated what it showed. "I remember everything," she said softly. "Tell me." She looked up at the trees, and the air seemed to go still. "I wasn't a victim," she said. "I was running because I had to, because they knew." "Who?" "My sister, her kids, her husband." Her voice broke. "They found out what I did, what I'd been doing for years. I thought I could fix it. I just needed them to be quiet." "For a little while?" Leary's breath caught. "What did you do?" Ava didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her dress and pulled out something wrapped in a wet, rotting handkerchief. "The Polaroid camera. I took pictures," she whispered, "to remind myself what was real, but he kept coming anyway." "Who is he, Ava?" She looked past him into the fog. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "He's guilt, given shape. He doesn't show up unless you really deserve him." Leary turned slowly. The woods were empty, but the shadows moved, and then the sound. A low, scraping whisper like metal teeth dragging across bone. Ava held up the camera. "He lets me remember in pieces, but never all at once. Because if I saw it all too soon, I'd kill myself before I could confess." The wind howled, carrying with it the echo of a child's scream. Ava turned to Leary. "I drugged them. I put something in their drinks. My sister begged me to pull over. She knew something was wrong. But I kept driving. Tears streamed down her face. I crashed on purpose." Leary staggered backward. "I didn't mean to die. I thought I could disappear, start over. But he," she pointed into the trees, trembling, "he won't let me." A figure stood among the pines, tall, silent, watching. No eyes, just a yawning, cavernous mouth. Ava stepped out of the stream, her skin turning pale as snow. "I have to finish it." And with that, she lifted the camera. Flash. The forest blinked white. And Ava was gone. Only the camera remained, sitting in the mud. One photo, still developing inside. Leary picked it up. His hands shook as the image came into focus. It was him, standing alone in the woods, and behind him, the man with no eyes. Leary sat in his car long after sunrise, the Polaroid photo clutched in his hand. His knuckles were white. The forest behind him was still, but inside, his mind churned like floodwater. The image on the photo was crystal clear now. Him, standing with his back to the camera, and something behind him. The man with no eyes. His face, or lack thereof, pressed inhumanly close, mouth gaping as if screaming silently into Leary's skull. It wasn't just fear curling in Leary's gut. It was recognition. He returned to the crash site one last time, this time following the faintest trail, scorched earth long buried beneath moss and leaves. Something about the curve of the hill, the bend of the tree limbs, it was familiar. He had been here before, not during the case. Before. As he moved deeper, flashes returned. A child's voice in the back seat. Laughter. His own. Not Evelyn's single quotes. His. Back in his apartment, he tore through old boxes, dusty with years of denial. Military records. Medical discharge papers. A sealed folder marked Private, 2003. Inside, a report from Fort Benning. Subject exhibits memory blackouts. Dissociative episodes following head trauma in IED explosion. His hand trembled. One more envelope. Inside, a photo. Him standing beside a woman. Blonde. Petite. Identical to Evelyn Carter. But the name on the back of the photo read Bethany Leary, his sister. The memories came fast and vicious. Bethany's voice, screaming in the passenger seat. "Marcus, stop the car. You're not okay." The kids in the back, crying, got his own hands on the wheel, shaking. A bottle of pills, open on the console. His breath, ragged, the road spinning. The tree, the impact, fire, screams, then silence. The news had reported them all dead. The flames too intense for confirmation. But Marcus survived. Crawled out dazed, half-burned, amnesiac. The trauma wiped his memory clean. Until Ava, Evelyn, or whoever she truly was, showed up, carrying echoes of the same nightmare. Not because she was haunted, but because she was created. A fragment, a projection, the part of his mind that remembered, that refused to let him bury it. The man with no eyes wasn't chasing her. He was chasing him. And the Polaroids? They weren't hers. They were his. Proof. Pieces of a truth he buried so deep, it tore itself into another voice, another face, another victim. He collapsed on the floor, sobbing. "I killed them," he whispered. "I killed them all." The next day, he walked into the Boone County Sheriff's office, holding a folder. He asked to speak with the district attorney. The confession was 37 pages long. Photos, names, coordinates. No one believed it at first. A decorated veteran, a respected detective. But the crash site was found right where he said it was. The bodies, the wreckage, the unburned fragments, and the dash cam, still intact, still screaming. He's in a psychiatric facility now, sometimes silent, sometimes shouting, sometimes sketching the same shape over and over. A tall man with no eyes and a mouth that never closes. They say it's a hallucination, but late at night, the nurses hear Marcus whisper to himself. He was never chasing her. Pause. He was trying to show me the mirror.